I slipped out of the alleyway after belting the ballistic shield back on and drawing my pistol. I also reloaded my rifle, because I'm not an idiot. I was heading for the entry of the warehouse with the double doors. I made it, largely unmolested, really. In fact, completely unmolested. No molestation happened, and that really is a term I've never understood in English. If anything, it was too easy, though. Nobody threw fireballs at me as I headed towards the warehouse. No one shot lightning from their fingers or fired spears at me. Everything seemed to be going peachy, so naturally I had to get royally fucked up at some point, because, oh, God, it's me, right? I actually felt him coming with my, psychic juju before he actually landed behind me, having apparently stepped calmly off the rooftop and used magic to not break his shins. It was Harpoon. The guy who impaled me with a spear. I'm gonna be really hurt if you forgot the guy who impaled me with a spear. Either way, instinct led me to dive forward. The roll that I landed in gave me a chance to get further away. Unfortunately, I am both a large man who was covered in equipment, and the hole in my side really did not like having some of that equipment press violently to it. So I sort of stumbled when I rose and tried not to fall over and die. From the pain alone, pretty much. Still, I was smart enough to come up with the ballistic shield in front of me and the suppressed cannon raised behind it. Harpoon, once again, just a reminder, the guy who put a spear through my fucking side. Something I've never really gotten over. He moved with impossible speed. Without anything that I could do about it, I couldn't stop him. He blurred around to my side, and I do mean blurred, and then slammed me back into the wall of the warehouse so hard that the concrete, the bricks, crunched a little bit. Or maybe that was most of my rib cage. Yeah, it's a toss-up. 6 of one, half a dozen of my ribs. In an instant, he knocked the shield arm aside and drove his knife up under my body armor, just above my groin. The world went white, man. It went white with the hottest, most agonizing pain I'd ever had the displeasure of feeling. And I'd been shot, like more than once. More than twice. Many bullets. I'd been shot a lot. But that knife, right above my groin, right in, aimed upwards. Ugh. And then at some point, just to add insult to injury, electricity exploded through my body. The bastard was using magic to tase me through his knife, which was inside me, by the way. Guess I didn't mention that. I dropped my gun. And things got pretty hazy for a little bit. Lucky for me, the shield was strapped to my arm, because if I had dropped that, more fun spear penetration time. And usually, I like a man to buy me dinner before spear penetration, or any kind of penetration, really. I think it's just polite, but, I don't know. The modern world as it is. "How the fuck are you still alive?" Harpoon demanded in a low, angry growl. He was so strong. Just so strong. The pain, too, that made things tough, even with all the medication. At that point, I wasn't even sure how many painkillers I was on, but I probably could have stocked a pharmacy. I'm just a pain in the ass, I guess, I rasped. He growled and dragged his knife out and then plunged it right back in. Because once wasn't enough. This time he stabbed me straight in, just below my belly button. It was like the body armor meant nothing, as if he had magic working on the blade. Big surprise. Knife went right through my armor. It hurt, I won't lie to you on that one. It hurt so bad I felt like the pain alone was going to kill me. It's probably a miracle that it didn't. But if I put my mind to it, I can ignore pain pretty well. And as before with the pain in the ass comment, if there is any possible chance to snark a person, I will absolutely deal with pain to do so. I feel it's a moral imperative. I tried to think, though, how I was going to get out of that one, because as much as my just biting wit was a great tool in my arsenal, it wasn't going to stop him from killing me. Things were looking relatively grim. He had me dead to rights, or just dead. Probably the second one. And about the time I realized that he was smiling at my pain, electricity poured through my body again, like a 1 second long taser. "Tell me how you survived my poison," he spat. So I did what I tend to do best. I lied to a bad guy. I had people waiting for me. I had a doctor less than a mile away. I barely made it, you fucker. Poisoning your spear like a coward. I managed, struggling against his iron strength. I'm already a dead man walking, asshole. So many damn drugs just to get me on my feet. My team wouldn't even come with me. I've got like 4, maybe 5 more hours to live. I'm already dead. Ain't that some shit? I know it sounds like a bad idea, but I had a good read on this guy. I knew what his poison did. I knew what its effects were. And I knew his type. I had to bet every goddamn blade he had was coated in the poison. I mean, he was wearing thickish leather gloves that went to the middle of his forearms, even. Way too long to be fashionable. Unless you're at a Ren fair. He stabbed me again, next to the second one, so just below my belly button and a little bit to the side. One of the sides. I was being stabbed. You'll forgive me if things are a little shaky. I struggled harder because I was being stabbed. And then I started going rigid in stages from my limbs to my torso to my jaw. Stiffening everything that I could and then going relatively limp. 2 really, really funny words to use in the same sentence. I'd used poisons in my day. I knew what paralysis was like. All the fight went out of me in a minute flat. If even that, it was probably less. I can't see. I ground out through clenched teeth. Even with my eyes unfocused, on purpose, I could see him smile. His strength started to fail. The pressure on me fell. I had to figure it took a lot of, mana or whatever the fuck, to keep that kind of strength going, the magical strength. And with his poison working, there was no reason he'd bothered to keep being that strong. To sell it once and for all, the lie, that is, I murmured, "Melissa. God damn it, Melissa." "The transgender girl? Who is she to you, big guy?" "Daughter. Actual father." His eyes widened and he stepped back, positively beaming, the evil son of a bitch. He left the knife in me. I assume it was a present. "You're her actual father. That's why you were at the house. That's why you were in a room." The mother must have called you when she went missing, figured, whatever you are, your skill set was good for finding her. An illegitimate child. God, this is fucking rich, he said, laughing afterwards. Like a dick. Like a stabby, poisony dick. What a dick. The sick son of a bitch was getting off on killing me even more, thinking that I was Melissa's father. He was, one of those guys who went into war, and he came out changed. And he liked it that way. And he liked it in the bad way. Here's a fun little secret, though. Just a little tidbit you might find interesting. I wasn't actually paralyzed. Remember, I was lying. I wasn't paralyzed, but I was going to die. The knife was really big, and it had definitely screwed me up inside. Based on what I saw when he had dragged it out and forced it into me again, in a different place that time, he actually stabbed me again at that point. It seemed likely that he did some damage to my liver, which meant I was probably bleeding like a motherfucker inside. With that done, he stepped back, and this time he took his knife with him. So I guess it wasn't a present. I trembled and shook, some of it legitimate on account of being stabbed, and some of it fake on account of being lying. And then I hit my knees and toppled to the ground, really convincingly, on account of the fact that I was bleeding a lot and in so much pain. I actually didn't act that part, I super just fell to the ground. With less incredible strength than before, he rolled me onto my back. I laid there, rasping and shuddering, arms half folded over my torso, shield covering up most of my abdomen. The bastard actually anticipated that, kicking my shield arm out of the way, exposing my other arm. Can't see. Can't see. I rasped. He laughed. I'm gonna sit here and watch you die, you gigantic piece of shit. I'm gonna make sure you're gone this time. You will not stop our great leader from ascending. He spat, kneeling and wiggling a finger into my ear. He wasn't being sexy, though he was about an inch from my face. He was watching my hands. I don't know why he was that close. I think he was listening for my breathing. Though, he was a stabby, poisony murderer, so he could have just been a creepy son of a bitch. But he was smart. The finger wiggle in my ear had a purpose. You don't have an earpiece on, big guy. Well, my talismans are giving me no new warnings. The wards are intact. No one is coming to help you. You really are alone. Do you feel good about what you've done here tonight? You killed so many people. You murdered them. Did you know, big man, that some of those men had families? Wives? Children? Yeah, well, apparently they picked shitty husbands and fathers. He didn't seem to like that very much. But, he seemed content to let the poison do its job. Some small part of me did agree, politely, with him commenting on me being alone. God, I was alone. So alone. Really just very, very pathetically alone. Of course, the more intelligent part of my brain told me that I should probably not evaluate how sad my life was at the moment where it was ending. With every passing second, I bled more. I was in deep trouble. His eyes turned to my face, and I slipped my hand a little bit lower, getting it wrapped around the grip on my rifle. When he kept his eyes on my face, I figured on the only plan I had. Harpoon. I'm not actually paralyzed, asshole. And then I swung my arm over and bashed him in the face with the edge of the ballistic shield. He reeled back, probably on account of the fact that he suddenly had a mouthful of his own teeth and blood, and I rolled onto my side, flicked the safety off, and flicked the rifle to automatic. The shield was in front of me. As I expected, he staggered backwards and flung his arm at me like he was trying to do some ninja move and fired a harpoon out of his sleeve, right at my heart, while trying to drag a radio off his belt with a free hand. As I found out, the ballistic shield did in fact stop the goddamn spears, or harpoons. It stopped both of them. So, I gotta call that one a win, I guess. As soon as I had the chance, I moved the shield, rotated the rifle out, and planted the magazine against the ground, angled the gun, and then opened fire on his thighs and mid to lower torso. Why that specific region? because I couldn't angle the gun any goddamn higher. I was laying on the ground. What do you want from me? It's not like I wanted to shoot him in the groin. It just, he was a victim of circumstance. The circumstance being I shot him in the dick. But a near empty 40-round magazine of subsonic ammunition is still 40 rounds of lead and copper death. As he fell, he threw his arm out at me, and another spear rushed towards me. I keep calling them... I should have called him spear. I can't call them harpoons. I don't know why. Don't worry about it. I'm a hypocrite. The radio clattered to the ground, though discarded, likely due to the shock at me turning everything in his groin region and just under his rib cage into something resembling Swiss cheese. I flattened onto my back, barely in time for the harpoon... I did it that time, to sail just over my knife-savaged, internally ruined abdomen, in which there were just no organs left intact, I'm 90% sure. I'm exaggerating, he ruptured my intestines, but look, it's not important. Either he was out of harpoons after that, or he was just too hurt to fire them off. But regardless, he stumbled sideways and pivoted, putting his back to the wall of the building and sliding down into a sitting position. For a moment, he stared down at his ruined lower body and upper legs in confusion, as if he couldn't parse the fact that I had just super killed him. I got up and dropped the rifle on its sling, drew my machete, and stalked to where he sat. How? Well, I'm not human, and your poison doesn't work on me. I growled, slashing with the machete. He jerked in surprise as the blade nearly took his goddamn head off, and then, he politely lost consciousness really fucking quick. Probably on account of the fact that he'd bled a lot and I nearly cut his head off. Whoops, my bad. His corpse even did a slightly dramatic spasm, before slumping to the side. Very, very cinematic death. It left me in a bad spot, though. I might have been up and walking, but I did not have a lot of time before I bled out, or in, or to the side. It didn't matter, I was bleeding, gonna die. On top of that, I had no idea how many people were inside the building, and I was just running out of gas. Supernaturally hard to kill or not, I was tired. So tired. Tired, half defeated, half dead, and I was standing near a door into the place where I was sure I would undoubtedly die. So I did what anybody in my position should do. I tightened the straps on my armor to the point I could barely breathe in a low rasp, nearly fell over grabbing my pistol, ditched the ballistic shield, reloaded the rifle, and staggered through the double doors into the wide-open interior, with the intent of holding the pistol in one hand and grabbing the rifle with the other. Because, fuck, I was already dead. Why not go out in style? It looked like at one point there had been some kind of office to the right of the double doors, through the single door that I had seen. But the walls had been torn out, leaving just debris stacked in a corner, making more space, Being a shitty rundown sort of place, cheaply for rent, there was no shelving whatsoever. What was present near the stacks of debris was about a dozen old chest freezers that looked second or possibly third hand lined up along the wall. My heart sank. Cold storage. Cold storage for dead kids. My eyes flicked to the center of the space. Hundreds of candles were intricately spaced out in what I assume was a pattern. Adrenaline was spiking, and it felt like I was packing a lot of thinking into a very short period of time, Closer inspection showed me geometry and strange, symbols and runes and shit, painted on the cement floor in a black liquid that seemed to fill the air with an ugly reek, and I do mean disgusting, like sewer and ass mated and it was their child. I figured that black must have been blood of the children, and maybe something else that was more pungent than blood, like the concept of a sewer. The children. I'm not going to make any jokes here. Their body parts formed the bulk of the circle, limbs mostly. Their heads marked major points in the circle, small groups of them each looking out in the 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, west. Torsos formed lines 3 torsos long, radiating from the outermost circle, between the points formed by the heads, like some kind of bastardized compass rose. All of their eyes were cut out. God knows where they were, those eyes. I never saw them, and I'm a little bit glad I didn't. I've seen a lot of things in my day, but that was so horrendous and outwardly horrifying and disgusting that even I had a singular moment where I was frozen in revulsion. Disgust might have turned my stomach, but Harpoon had already cut it to ribbons. Melissa was in the center of the circle, nude and bloody, and... oh God, they'd hurt her. Carved her skin with odd runes and ritualistic symbols, diagrams and swirling lines, in almost loving detail all the way up onto the sides of her head. They had shaved her head down into a wide mohawk that they left intact either out of laziness or some twisted sense of style. It was incredible and sad all at once how flawlessly the curving lines and swirling marks had been cut. On his knees, straddling her and holding a knife high, was the cult leader. The blade was one of those wavy types, all smooth curves tapering to a razor point. 12 men stood around the central circle of limbs. Another 10 stood around the outside. The leader met eyes with me in the slow and somehow fast moments before the blade fell. It was times like that, back then, and in the old days long before, when a sort of anger took me. Sometimes a rage would possess me for years, until it found its outlet, and sometimes it would possess me into a seething, frothing madness. I suppose now that I know that it is supernatural. But at the time I had no idea that the only thing controlling it and making it into what it was my human side, which tempered it and allowed it to turn into a driving force. It was this all-consuming madness that led me to spending almost a decade and a half of my life taking down the borderline spy organization that previously employed me, that led me to patiently gather evidence against them under the guise of willing service, until I was able to take them apart in the press, with the help of a few intrepid reporters and some hard work. It was that madness that led me to hunt the leaders of that organization, those men and women who had ordered atrocities for the sake of money. And it was that patient rage and madness that had led me to Melissa in that warehouse, my Melissa Lee, pretty little Melissa Lee. It was the patient rage that made me raise my gun and fire around. It was the pulsing, beating drum of that horrid fucking anger that made me break into a mad, bloodthirsty sprint when the cult leader simply smiled as the bullet that I fired struck a rippling shield in front of him and glanced aside. As I ran, the knife fell, and Melissa died. She died as the steel sank into her, driving cleanly into her heart. I screamed, and started shooting the men standing around the circle who seemed rigidly locked in place by magic or whatever else. Time seemed to bend and shift around the cult leader as I drew closer, and I kept screaming, God damn it. I kept screaming for all the good it did. I'd failed, and my girl was dead. I'd failed.